Namaste everyone. Welcome to Paris Style Poem channel. Today in the series of summaries we have a new lesson. The lesson's name is The Open Window from It So Happened book. It is an interesting suspense story. It is written by Saki. Let's see the introduction. Frampton Nuttall's nervousness. Is it always good to run for one's life? Of course no, but our hero Mr. Frampton Nuttall did so. He was suffering from nervousness. He went to a calm and quiet place in the countryside for treatment. But what he got there was none other than a nail in his coffin, as he was threatened to death by a 15-year-old girl named Vera. Nuttall's sister backed the wrong horse by sending her brother to the village by thinking that he would have mental peace there. She had told him that he would meet very few people in the countryside. She gave him letters of introduction to many nice people, as she had been there before 4 years. Vera and her imaginary tragic story. The young girl, Vera, for whose aunt Mr. Nuttall had come, was very imaginative and amusing. She was very calm and confident, whereas he lacked it. On reckoning his newness to the place, Vera planted a fake but mystic story with a touch of reality. Vera told Nuttall that a tragedy had happened in the family about 3 years ago. She mentioned 3 years specifically, as his sister had been there 4 years back. Vera pointed to a large glass window which opened onto a lawn. It was kept wide open even on an October afternoon, as her aunt's husband and 2 brothers had gone out for shooting. This happened exactly on that day when he had come to give the letter of introduction. All the 3 members had been out since that day and did not return. It was said that they had drowned in the bog. Even their bodies were not recovered. Since that day Mrs. Sapleton had been waiting for their arrival. Such a frightening and mystic story turned the nerves of Mr. Frampton run with 1000 km speed. Mrs. Sapleton's arrival. Meanwhile, Mrs. Sapleton entered the room and apologized for coming late. She hoped that the open window did not bother Mr. Nuttall. She told him that her husband and brothers had gone for shooting. She always thought that they would come back someday through that window along with their dog, as they used to do. They would enter the house through the open window. They had gone to shoot birds in the marsh, so they would spoil the carpet, as their shoes would be muddy. Isn't that a scary story? Nuttall's reaction. Nuttall has been a barrel of laughs as he believes in the false story of Mrs. Sapleton. She went on talking about the horrible details of shooting and the shortage of birds. He tried in vain to turn the talk to a less horrible topic. The doctor had advised Nuttall to take complete rest. He should avoid mental excitement. He should also not do any exercise needing great physical strength. He knew that Mrs. Sapleton's eyes were directed to the window and the lawn, as she was not interested in his illnesses and weaknesses. Nuttall's reaction to the strangers. Mrs. Sapleton came to terms with the ghastly story. The 3 were seen coming after the dusk, which made her very excited. They all carried guns. The girl confirmed the fear by her face without any sympathy for the man. For him the arrival of the trio was just like dancing with death. They were in time for tea. All the details told earlier by the girl came true, like the overcoat, song, and the dog. They looked as if they were covered with mud. Frampton Nuttall trembled with fear. Frampton Nuttall should not have a chicken-hearted person. After looking at the sight, he took his stick and coat and ran through the hall door, along the pathway, and reached the front gate at the drop of the hat. He was suggested not to make any frantic movements, but due to the false story of the niece, he had to run for his life. Not only physical exertion but also mental trauma was a great blow on him. So it is an irony that he had come to the village by imagining that he would have rest there, whereas he was completely restless. A cyclist had to run into the hedge to avoid collision with him. The girl's explanation. Mrs. Sapleton thought that he had seen a ghost. She told him that he was an extraordinary man who could talk only about his illnesses. He went away without a word of goodbye or apology. The girl who was the main culprit in the whole scene took the charge so that she could save her skin and explained that Nuttall rushed out because he was afraid of the dogs. He was terribly afraid of dogs because once a group of dogs chased him into a graveyard. He had to spend the night in a newly dug grave. The dogs were growling all around him. From that day he was completely afraid of dogs. Thus, the comic terror and mystic story comes to end with a funny ending. I hope that you have understood the chapter. Thank you to all the invisible fingers who supported Parry's style poem.